10 million, that's the number of people in the US who lost their jobs within just a 2-week period at the end of March. The result is a flood of new people all in the job market at the same time. However, businesses are also reducing the number of open positions to better cope with the economic hardships brought on by the pandemic.
And for you, this means more competition for the available jobs. So, what can you do to stand out? That's what we're here to talk about today.
I'm Annyce Davis, or Brown Girl Dev on Twitter. I work as an engineering director for Meetup. Part of my primary job responsibilities is the recruiting and hiring of engineers.
And I'm Wesnie. I've been an Android developer for 3 years. I'm currently at iHeartRadio helping to improve their music application. And trust me, I know a lot about the job search journey.
And together, we're going to walk through each of the primary stages of the hiring funnel. We'll share the goal, best practices, and tips for how you can stand out, starting with your resume.
Then we'll talk about the recruiter phone screen,
The hiring manager phone screen,
the tech phone screen,
and finally, the onsite.
To help make this talk more practical, we'll base it on a fictitious job posting for a mid-level engineer. Now, I'm not going to read this word for word, but here's a quick highlight of the overview and a close-up of the requirements. We'll see how this job posting plays a large role in how you structure your resume and your conversation. So let's get to it. This posting is for Star Electric, and as you can see, they are looking for a mid-level engineer with familiarity with the latest technologies and also has experience, tech experience, and also experience working with others.
So, the resume review is the first stage of the funnel. Typically, for a mid level engineering position, you may have to compete with over 200 other applicants. The goal of this stage is to market yourself and get an interview. You successfully market yourself by making sure you do the following: include relevant projects and work history, document the technologies and libraries that you're familiar with, and make sure you keep things succinct and metrics focused. Let's look at an example. Here we have the resume of Mary Jones. We'll look at each of these 3 sections: the objective, the skills, and the experience, to see how we can better help Mary to stand out. We're going to start with the objective. I would like to work full-time as an Android developer. This objective tells the reviewer nothing about Mary that isn't already obvious. Of course, she wants to be a full-time Android developer because she's applying for this position. We can definitely do much better. Here is a much better version. Dedicated and experienced Android developer with proven success in developing high-quality user experiences, seeking an opportunity to use my knowledge to collaborate closely with design and backend teams on a meaningful product. Let's highlight why this works. First of all, we're including the fact that we're experienced. The job posting did mention that it wanted someone who had at least 3 years worth of experience. Then, in the job requirements, it specifically mentioned that they were looking for someone who could collaborate with design and backend. So, check. We're really nailing the job description so far with just our objective. Next, the skills section is just a long list of expert at this and expert at that. First of all, it goes without saying that you shouldn't lie on your resume. If you're applying for a mid-level position, it's unlikely that you're an expert at everything already. What's more, it puts you in an awkward situation when it comes time to verify your employment, or even worse, you get the job and then you're not able to do the work. So just stick with the facts. This is a much better format. It leaves out the proficiency level altogether because that will be uncovered as you move throughout the funnel. Second, It's much easier to scan and see that the main job requirements have been met. Keep in mind, there's at least 200 other resumes that someone needs to review. You want to make sure that your resume is easy to scan. And then third, it takes up less space on the page. So now you can use that space for more important things like your work experience. Speaking of experience, here's what we have from Mary so far. Improved our test coverage by writing some unit tests, implemented new features and bug fixes. It's pretty boring, and it certainly wouldn't stand out to a reviewer. We need to give more. One of the best ways to structure the bullets in your job experience is to use this formula. I accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. Let's see an example. Take that one bullet, contributed to transforming our app into a multi-module app. Instead, we could say, transformed our Android application into a multi-module app by introducing dynamic feature modules, which lowered our build times by 35%. Much better, and it uses that formula that we just shared. When formulated, your bullets, make sure you use words that have power and grab the reader's attention. We have things like sustained, formalized, developed, orchestrated, transformed. All of these words have power and will help your resume to stand out. We've updated Mary's resume to include the tips that we've shared, and we've even added in her GitHub handle and LinkedIn URL. This resume is sure to stand out and make it to the next stage of the funnel. So for you, make sure that you cover the requirements in the posting. Use action verbs and metrics. Include links to both GitHub and any published applications. If you do these things, then you'll be well on your way to the next stage.
The next phase is the recruiter phone screen. It's the initial impression you'll have on the company, and it's important to know how to navigate this first step. The goal of this phase is to show the recruiter that you're a good fit for the company and that you share the same values as the company. Before having this interview, it's best to do your research on the company and think about potential questions to ask. Some do's that you want to do in this part of the interview is to provide your desired salary and spend some time researching the company. Some examples of research to do during this stage is to look at websites like Glassdoor to see what it's like to work there. It's also best to Google the latest company news and see information on the person interviewing you. That way, you have things to talk about and questions to ask the person interviewing you about the position. Look, it doesn't help anyone for you not to provide your desired salary. The recruiter is looking for someone that meets the range of the company, and you don't want to waste your own time for a job that is below your expectations. Show sincere interest in the company. You can do that by having your story, which is a prepared story that doesn't sound rehearsed, of why you admire the company. Here's an example. From a very young age, I have always had a keen interest in music. Here's an example. I have always enjoyed listening to different genres of music, and I have taken on the role of becoming the car DJ during road trips. Music is a big part of my everyday life, which is why I chose to work at iHeartRadio, to have an insight on how the music goes from production to the general population. Some points to help you stand out to the recruiter are to make sure you've done your research and that you have an interest in the company. You'll want to make sure that you're up to date with the latest technologies, since you might be questioned on that during this round. It's also important that you're serious about moving forward. The recruiter that interviews you is often working on a timeline. They usually have 2 to 3 weeks to fill the position, which is why it's important to not waste their time or yours. Be ready. You'll also want to demonstrate intellectual curiosity. Talk about a time where you've introduced a new technology or process to your team that had an impact on results. Show that you're a fast learner who could easily grow at the company. An example could be, I initiated working with MVI at my company because I felt that it would be a good software architecture to implement into our code base, since it was a mess before. I decided to create a sample project and show it to my manager during our one on one and eventually my teammates. My teammates were impressed by the simplicity of using MVI and decided that we would migrate it to the code base. This change helped to simplify our code base and made it that much better to work with.
Awesome. Thanks for providing that very clear example, Wesnie. Now, let's move over to the hiring manager phone screen. This is the role that I'm typically playing in the hiring funnel. I get to chat with the person to learn more about their career journey and where they see themselves going next, and whether or not they'd be a good fit for the team, and vice versa. As the interviewee, you want to start building a relationship at this point. Whether it's fair or not, we hire people that we like and who we feel can do the job. So, establishing a relationship with the hiring manager is important, as often they're the final decision maker. You can do this by doing the following: be prepared for the tell me about yourself, demonstrate that you can do the job, and effectively tell your story. Let's look into each of these in a bit closer detail. Tell me about yourself. This is not the time to just read through your resume. Likely, the hiring manager has already done that. Instead, tell me about yourself is the same as convince me what it is about you that makes you the person for the job. It's your personal elevator pitch. You have about 1 to 2 minutes to give an explanation of how you benefit the team and the organization. You have to sell yourself. As an example, here's my personal elevator pitch. I'm a detail oriented, impact focused leader. I thrive in challenging environments and bring clarity to the ambiguous. I love to share what I learn with others, and I use my ability to break complicated things down into simpler pieces to help elevate others, not only internally, but externally. Now, with just a few sentences, I've unveiled what it is that I can bring to an organization. You would want to spend time working on your personal elevator pitch so that it's something that comes across naturally and not rehearsed. Also, I mentioned that you want to be able to tell your story. This is your chance to go beyond just being likable. You now need to demonstrate that you can actually do the job. For this, you'll want to have an example for each of the items in the job requirements. This is where the hiring manager is looking to kind of check the boxes and don't find any red flags so that they can move you forward. So, as an example, if the hiring manager says, I see, tell me about your project while you were at ABC Studios," you could say, "I converted the app from Java to Kotlin." Okay. Or you could say, "Oh, yes, ABC Studios. That was a great experience for me. That was the year that Google officially announced that Kotlin was a first class language. I had the opportunity to convert our app from Java to Kotlin. In fact, we were running on both phones and watches at that time." Notice the difference. It's more conversational and it addresses more of the items in the job requirements. Now, with the basics out of the way, if you really want to stand out, you'll need to do the following. Try out the product. For example, if you're a mobile developer, download the app or at least just check it out in the App Store before your interview. Look the person up on LinkedIn. Find some common ground that you can talk to them about. And come prepared with questions. If you don't have any questions, it comes across as if you're not really interested in the job. Here's a sampling of a few questions that I personally ask when I'm interviewing. What's the ideal candidate like for this job? Describe your leadership style. What would my day to day responsibilities be? What's the rest of the team like? If you ask these questions, you learn a lot about the company and the team, but at the same time, you're showing your sincere interest.
The tech phone screen is the phase where we get a chance to show off our skill sets to someone from the team that you'll be hired for. It usually comes with a challenge in order to gauge your skill set and give employers an idea of how you would perform when given a task. The goal of this round is to highlight your technical skills and demonstrate how you would perform on the job. You'll either be given an algorithm or a take-home coding challenge, or have a live coding session. For either one, you'll need to prepare so that it's easier to get through the roadblocks. To prepare, you'll have to do research on the latest technologies and put them into practice. Also, be ready to discuss your prior projects and work experience. My process when preparing for a tech phone screen is visiting websites on guidelines and the latest technologies. I use what I learned to then work on small projects using the latest technologies, such as Jetpack components, Swift UI, coroutines, Work Manager, View Models, and Room. For my last interview, I was tasked with learning about coroutines and I had to work on a coding challenge to show my skills. Here's an example of one website I used as part of my research for the challenge. You can use any website with official documentation to implement the coding challenge. For algorithm questions, preparing will involve websites such as LeetCode and HackerRank to help you better improve your problem solving skills. As a heads up, many companies will add a new feature to their application, will have you add a new feature to their application as part of the challenge. So it's a good idea to make sure you have used their product. When interviewing for iHeart, for example, I was asked to design a system for organizing their songs. For the tech phone screen, it is very important that you are able to discuss your solution. This gives the person interviewing you an idea of your thought process, and it allows them to see how you work through a problem. To stand out in this phase, you must be able to discuss your solution and thought process. If you are able to get through the solution before the interview time is up, they will most likely give you a harder question, or they'll ask you to add more features, such as adding tests, clean the code, or enhance the UI. You must also be prepared for questions that you might not know the answer to. And for example, instead of saying I don't know to a question, you could say, I don't have much experience with that, but I do know about so and so technology. And you could talk about what you do know about that technology. That way, you're still answering the question and demonstrating your skill set.
Now, these days, you might be doing an on-site virtually. So we wanted to share some tips that can assist you in this kind of new form of interviewing. The goal of the on-site is to land the job. And to do that, you want to keep these things in mind. Tailor your response to the interviewer's role, be personable but professional, and prepare in advance for any final technical exercises. Did you know that for over 20% of people interviewed in this survey, they make a hiring decision within the first 1 to 5 minutes of talking to someone? Since that's the case, you really need to make the most of this time and get started off right. One of the best things you can do is tailor your response to the interviewer's role. As you've seen so far, the recruiter has a slightly different goal than the hiring manager, which also differs slightly from the engineer in the tech screen. You want to be able to demonstrate to all of them that you're a good fit when they come back together to share their takeaways on your interview. And if you are having the on-site virtually, be professional. Make sure your video background is not so busy and distracting. Still dress appropriately, well, at least up top. You want to show that you take this seriously. Finally, make sure you're prepared for any final technical exercises that you may have to participate in. Often there are whiteboard exercises or even pairing on a technical problem with an engineer on the team. Make sure you ask in advance what the entire on-site process will entail so that you're not surprised the day of. A lot of times with the virtual on-sites, there may be an online whiteboarding platform and you'll have to work on some exercises. So just ask in advance so that you're prepared. How can you stand out in this phase? Make it a conversation. People love having a little bit of back and forth. It doesn't have to be just you answering only their questions. Provide some supporting evidence. If you mention something, try to find some statistic to back it up. Keep it positive. If they say, what makes you, like, why are you in the market? Why are you looking? Don't say something like, oh, I hate my boss. My last job sucks. I hate all my co. No, that's not it. Keep it positive. The best answer to that question is new opportunities and increased challenge. It works every time. Don't harp on the perks. Hey, so how much vacation do we have? And tell me, do we have commuter benefits? This is not the time. You'll have plenty of time later on to talk about the different bonuses and packages available in the position.
But what if you've been in the industry for a while and you're looking for a senior level or management type position? Then you'll have to approach things slightly different. You'll want to think more about the behavioral aspects of the interviews and then making sure you communicate effectively. For many here on the call, I know that English is not your first language. Does that mean that you're out of the running? Of course not. Instead, you'll want to use the STAR method to address the behavioral questions, like tell me about a time when, or what's your greatest weakness, etc. And you can do this by preparing in advance. Let's use this example. Tell me about a time when you made a mistake. Brainstorm a few examples of particular successes in your previous job and think about how to discuss the success using the STAR framework. To answer this question, we'll use this example. I accidentally overwrote my coworker's code the day before a release. We can use the statement as the situation. Your task would be that you had to get your coworker's changes back. The action would be that you stayed up late to take a series of Git command steps to retrieve your coworker's work. And the result would be that you retrieved your coworker's work and you were able to go through with the release. So your response would be something like this. There was once a time when I overwrote my coworker's changes when we were working on the same branch. Since the release was the next day, I had to act fast and get the branch back to how it was. I then decided to stay up throughout the night to fix this. Doing this allowed me to get the branch fixed in time for the release.
And that's it. We've gone through each stage of the hiring funnel, from the resume to the recruiter phone screen, hiring manager, tech, and the onsite. We really hope that you learned at least one thing that will help improve your next job search experience. When you put these techniques into practice, you can look forward to getting hired. Thank you so much. And once again, I'm Annyce or at Brown Girl Dev on Twitter.
And I'm Wesnie Marcelin. You can find me on LinkedIn.
We're really excited to take any questions.
Hey ladies, before we jump into the questions, I would love to thank you so much for doing such an awesome presentation. I feel like it's super valuable to know all of the stages, and especially as a lot of people are losing jobs and thinking about working remotely, transitioning to different companies. So the presentation was fantastic. Thanks a lot for all of these practical tips that can actually be applied in real life. And so for all of you, the audience who are watching the presentation, please feel free to ask questions in the Telegram chat. There are no questions at this point, so I have a few topics that I think will be super valuable to discuss, and hopefully will be beneficial for the audience to hear answers to. From my experience, when I was going also through a lot of interviews back, in the Eastern Europe and then in the US, I realized that the hardest part for me was to actually get technically ready for interviews, because different companies have different requirements, a different set of expectations that they set. And I feel like the preparation for especially big companies such as like FANG, such as like Google, Facebook, Apple, where they require a lot of technical preparation, and cracking algorithms and data structures was one of the greatest challenges for me. So I would love to probably ask your experience, and maybe Wesnie, yours will be also super valuable, how you get ready for those technical rounds of the interview, where people should start. If you can advise some resources that are valuable, it also will be super helpful.
Sure. So, for when I'm preparing for the technical round, I usually go to websites like hackerrank.com or leetcode.com, and then I also do some reading through the book called Cracking the Coding Interview. And I usually spend about 2 weeks before the interview and going through different problems in different sections of the textbook, and then I'll get a whiteboard or a piece of paper and practice that way.
Cool. Thank you so much, Wesnie. Annyce, maybe you, as a director, could share what you expect from engineers when they come, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure you have to do tons of interviews as well.
Yeah, so I was gonna say it's been a while since I've personally had to do like a very rigorous tech screen. But what I do expect from engineers is that they're able to explain the solutions that they provide. One of the, I mean, so many people are very good engineers and can do things technically, but it's few people who have the ability to explain the reason why they're doing something. And then the next step would be to explain the trade offs. So that really helps you to stand out. Why did you choose this option over another one? That kind of comes with more experience. I noticed that that's my expectation for more senior level, staff level engineers, that they can explain the trade offs and alternative solutions that could achieve a similar goal.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Another question that I have is, it's great when we land, when we basically perform fantastically at the interview, and we land a job, we got an offer, and we're super excited. But I feel like definitely there are situations when we fail, and I actually would love to hear what usually happens when you fail, and what are the next actions that people and engineers have to do in order not to get discouraged, but actually keep being buzzed about future opportunities. And yeah, so in situations of failure, what engineers should do.
Yeah,
Usually
go ahead. I'll let you start, Wesley.
Okay, so usually whenever I fail at something, I try not to be hard on myself. It's very easy to get like imposter syndrome or feel like you might not know what other teammates might know. So I try to think as positive as I can, and if I'm struggling in an area, I'll try my best to get improve in that area. And if I have to reach out to another teammate for help or look online for help, I try to use as many resources as I can to improve for the next time to avoid failing again.
One
Awesome.
thing
Thank you,
that I
Wesley.
Yep. One thing that I think you should do is consider where you're failing in the funnel. Is it that you're never getting past the resume review? Then that's a time to try to reach out to someone and have them review your resume. I've had several people send me their resume and just say, like, hey, I'm never getting past resume review. Can you take a look and give me some feedback? And then I've been able to help them improve and move on to the next phase. Well, what if you're failing when you get to the hiring manager phone screen? That could indicate that your responses to some of those behavioral questions is not as solid. So you want to do practice sessions with friends. The main thing is try to improve and not feel that your job search is hopeless.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. And if I can share some of my experience, I hope someone would find it also maybe insightful. I feel like we've always been in a situation where we fail. I feel like it's hard to find an engineer who passed all of the interviews to all of the companies, and it's all about your philosophy. Because for me, a good rule of thumb is I interview not only when I want to get a job, I interview also not to get rusty on how to do this, and basically practice. and see what is there in the tech community that probably has changed since the time I got a job. And so definitely reasons why I failed. But I always, as both of you mentioned, took it as a learning experience. I always sat down after each interview and thought about what I didn't do right, where I didn't get prepared enough to basically perform my best. And yeah, so I feel like the important thing is just not to be hard on yourself and not think that, oh, I'm just like maybe not compatible or like with a specific position, because an interview, if you think about this, it's not a true validation of your skills. Sometimes it's just a matter of a luck, a matter of like in what mood woke up, what other external factors affected you as you came to the company to get interviewed. Depends sometimes, like, unfortunately, but this is also true, there is like human factor around interviewers who are interviewing you. So all of these factors might not always play, nicely. And so the right rule of thumb is just do some type of reflection. Sit down and think, as Annyce mentioned, where you failed. Was it truly, your kind of shortage where you don't have enough skills, and then put a lot of efforts into improving them? Or maybe it's just like a matter of external circumstances not playing out nicely. Cool, that's great. Let me check. Let me check the channel and see whether there are questions. No, there are no questions, but I do have another question. And the question is, if you could probably share your experience between between interviewing at different type of companies. And this is what I've noticed. I've interviewed a lot at startups and worked at startups. I interviewed at big companies, and I feel like the expectations are slightly different. Is that something that probably just I observed, or you also kind of like seen this tendency where even the interview process itself will be different at a startup compared to, I don't know, Google, Facebook, Apple, and other big corps?
It's definitely a difference between those different types of companies, and there's a really important reason why. Often, if you're interviewing at a small startup, chances are you'll have to wear many hats and you'll have to interface with more of the company. You may be working closely with someone from marketing, you'll be working with people on the data team. You may even be asked to pitch in and contribute to an API. So, for a startup, we're really looking for someone who is eager to learn. Wesnie talked about demonstrating intellectual curiosity. Um, Especially recruiters are looking for someone who can fit into the organization, not specifically only that one role that you're applying for. Whereas when you're at a larger company, you may mostly be in that one department. So you will probably interview with more people who will be on your team and in that reporting line with your hiring manager. So there are different expectations, and they are looking for someone mostly to fulfill that specific role. So that is what I've kind of seen as the difference between startup world and then large corporations.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really great observation around when you're interviewing for a startup, you have to be ready that you're going to be, in most cases, just doing a one type role, but you have to jump between the different sides of the company and support the different roles. That's definitely holds true. Thank you so much for sharing this. If I can add, I also noticed that the interview at a tech company, at a large tech company, is very great. And usually, the way it's being conducted, you're given 45 minutes and two pretty complex challenges that you have to solve. And it's truly solely focused on your tech skills, how quickly you can, as an engineer, crack those challenges, come up with a solution. You really don't have time to waste it left and right. Think. And this is my experience with like Facebook and Google's. And when you're going through an interview at a startup, it's well, a nice thing is that sometimes you can be even interviewed by VPs, especially if the company is very small. I remember when I was going through an interview process with Jet.com, and I don't remember, like maybe 30s employee with the company, and then the VP walks into the room, and you're like, wow, I wasn't really ready for that. So it's kind of a nice surprise when you get, to chat with such important people in the company, but at the same time, it can be scary. And definitely, if usually VP interviews you, it's more of like how good of a cultural fit you are to this company, and less of, like he will be pressing you on like hard challenges and technical nuances, algos, and data structures. So that's yeah, one of the observations that I noticed. And another thing is that I feel like large companies are taking more time to come up to a decision. So just because sometimes you won't hear a response within a week doesn't mean that you don't qualify, doesn't mean that you should just got upset that you didn't get an offer. In most cases it takes up to like 3 weeks for the company, for a large corp to make a decision on whether you actually are getting an offer or not, because there are multiple layers of approval. And if we're talking about small startups, I remember at a call when I got interviewed and I got an offer, and I just left the building and I'm getting a call from them, and they're like, "Hey, we're making you an offer." I'm like, "Right now? Are you serious?" I just like interviewed. Did you? And actually, the VP called me, and I'm like, "Did you actually talk to the other people who interviewed me?" He's like, "Yeah, I already talked to everyone." So it's like those differences. I find pretty funny, and it's definitely there is definitely a big difference, and yeah, just be ready for this type of things. Um, so let me probably quickly check the chat and ask you one more thing about. So we talked about failures. We talked about how the interview process can be different. I actually would love to talk about a success story of like, imagine you interviewed at 10 different companies and you got 5 different offers. What should be those weighing points when considering those offers? Because I found myself in such a situation where at some point in my career, I realized that I need to start looking for new opportunities. And then I interviewed in multiple companies and realized that I got enough offers, but then what should I choose? Like, how can I go about them? And also, how can I be practical and nice about telling other companies that I'm not choosing them right now, but maybe in the future I will consider them. So just kind of like having them on the backlog list. Like, yeah, if you could share some of your experiences in this part, it would be super valuable.
Okay, so when I have offers, what usually helps me to decide is seeing like how it was working with the other engineers on the during the tech screen. I check to see like how it was, if I enjoyed it, if I felt like it was, like intense, or how I felt about it, and also how I felt communicating with the other people throughout the interview round. And then I also think about like work life balance as well, and try to see if the company is like a good fit for me, like in my next role. And then I also check to see if I'll be able to like learn and grow in the next role.
Yeah, for me, I look for several different factors. So first, I'm looking for flexibility. Is this a company that is very 9 to 5, or are they mission and task oriented? Can I potentially see myself working for this company maybe part time a few years from now? What kind of growth opportunities do they have? But the most important thing that I look for in any job is, who is my direct manager? Your direct manager has such a huge outsized impact on your success in a company that you always want to think about your direct manager, their communication style, their management style, and whether or not you feel you can work for them and that you can learn from them. That's something that's so important to me, is my direct manager. And then, how you asked, how can you turn people down nicely? You don't really have to worry about it too much, because recruiters always have people in the back burner and they always reach out to people. They don't take it personally. They're extending dozens of job offers all the time. They're always chatting with people and keeping people in the pipeline. So, really, just saying, like, oh no, this is not a good fit for me right now, but I really enjoyed the process. Thank you for your time, is more than sufficient.
Awesome, great. Yeah, Annyce, thank you so much for sharing this point of like, don't worry about sending a negative, not negative, but sending not a nice yes message to a recruiter. Definitely be nice and polite about, your decision. And what I actually find happening a lot is when recruiters are asking why you have chosen one company over the other. So, I always try to be transparent about what I, what were the decisive factors for me of like why I decided to choose one over the other, because I think it's valuable for the company also just to know what they can work on better, or like how can they improve their interview process in order to make sure that future candidates who land and reach out will eventually choose them over the other candidates. So maybe just point that I would love to add is absolutely culture matters a lot. I remember, and not that I remember, but try every time you walk into the company, try to be very observative around what's happening. Because I remember my experience was different in different companies, and sometimes I got a feeling like the company was disorganized. People were just running the processes not really smoothly. When even my whole interview process was kind of a mess, while other companies have it so fleshed out. And so for me, this, like nice feeling that people got it covered even at the interview stage mattered a lot. As well, like your package and compensation matters. So see whether you can negotiate, whether if you want like one company but the offer is not as strong as the company that you don't like but offers more, maybe you can just push them and ask for slightly more. Like all of those negotiation skills are also very important. I know there were just a lot of talks and discussions on this topic, so we probably shouldn't go too much into this. And at this point, I would love to thank everyone for, first of all, coming and watching this talk. I would love to hugely thank Annyce and Wesnie to sharing all of the experiences. I feel like this is tremendously important and beneficial for anyone at this period of time in the world. And the next steps for us will be in the Telegram chat. We will share the link, or probably it's already shared, to the discussion zone. So the discussion zone is the zone where we will continue talking about interview process challenges, and the audience will have a chance to ask questions. So please go there. The link is in the Telegram chat. Join us for a chat. Hopefully it will be an interactive communication. Again, hugely thank you to, if I can say so in English, sorry, to Wesnie and Annyce. It was fantastic. Truly appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time and all of the efforts to putting such a fantastic presentation. Thanks everyone, and we'll see everyone in the discussion zone in a few minutes.
Bye.